Happy New Year! I am recording this last podcast of the year 2022 from a vacation home in Thistle, Utah. It's New Year's Eve, and I thought I would share some thoughts on how we think about the future, since this is a time of year when people tend to think about the future and plan for it and reflect on the past as well. So, focusing on the future, what do you see? Are you excited because you're imagining all of the amazing things that are going to be happening for you and your family in the upcoming year? Or are you feeling stressed or frightened because you're imagining all of the hard and scary things that you guys might be facing? And did you know that all of this is just a story in your head at this point? That's the thing about the future. It isn't happening yet, so we don't actually know what it's going to look like. We like to think that we know, and we tend to give a lot of credence to our stories about what is going to happen, and that tends to color our experience of the present. But we do not actually know what is going to happen or how it's going to play out despite our best predictions. For example, if we're worried about the decisions a child or sibling or friend is making because we think those decisions will lead to problems for them in their future, then we often tend to let that worry hover over all of our interactions with that person. We get distracted from our present experiences by thoughts of that worry for them, and then when we do interact with them, we may show up in a different, less accepting or loving way than we would otherwise. Ironically, we may end up pushing them away from us and towards the thing that we're worried about because we let our worries and concerns drive us instead of our love and faith that the universe is conspiring in their favor as well as ours. I imagine someone out there might be thinking that even though we can't predict with 100% certainty what the future will hold, we can make predictions based on past experiences. Stay with me. I agree that there are predictable patterns, and it is a helpful, useful thing to plan for the future, and we may even want to offer advice and warnings to those that we love whose choices may lead to problems for them and down the road if we see that happening. But what I'm making a case for here is awareness and intentional thinking and purposeful action with acceptance of what is, rather than abstract worrying about the future. The other day, I was coaching a woman who was concerned about the direction an important relationship in her life was heading. When she thought about the future, she could only see problems and the relationship going downhill. One of my favorite coaching concepts in dealing with worry, which is always future-focused, is the idea of giving equal time in our minds to the possibility of good as to the possibility of bad. When we're thinking about the future, it's kind of like watching a TV show. We tend to spend all of our time on the channel of the worst-case scenario. Since everything in the future is a story in our minds anyway, we can choose to spend time on the channels of better than worst case scenario or even the best case scenario if we want to. And I would suggest that giving at least equal airtime to the best case scenario would bring us some peace and alleviate some of our worry, and may even help to create it in our future, since the way that we think tends to play out in our reality. When my client was considering the future of her relationship and all she was seeing was deterioration, her mind automatically went to nitpicking and finding all of the faults that they could of the other person. When we talked about the best case scenario, that maybe a couple of years down the road she'll look back on this time and see that it was just a blip in the relationship and how they're stronger on the other side of it than they were before, it changed everything. It opened her mind to that possibility, and I could visibly see her relax. Both of these possible future scenarios are just as likely to happen at this point, and giving equal airtime to both is an important strategy to mitigating worry and allowing goodness to happen. Let me give you another example. In working with people who have had concussions, I've observed that the mental and emotional aspect of recovery is just as important, if not more so, than the physical aspects of recovery, and can be even harder to manage. The unknown of where and when and how strongly the symptoms might come up is really challenging, and I've seen people pull back and away from their lives because their symptoms can feel so unpredictable. When they look to the future, they feel completely overwhelmed and hopeless because it seems like they will never be able to be themselves again and live life the way they did prior to the concussion. I would offer to them this same equal airtime strategy as they look to their future. Rather than giving all the airtime to the future of despair and hopelessness, try giving some airtime to the possibility that things will get better, that the symptoms will become manageable, and that you will have hope and joy again. Giving at least some airtime to thinking of these possibilities can be life-changing. This isn't just about blindly choosing blissful ignorance of the future. It's about recognizing that our experience now and in the future is colored by the way that we think about the future, and that the way we think about it is 100% in our control. It's just the stories that we tell ourselves. So if we're going to give airtime to worst possible scenario, let's give at least equal airtime to the best possible scenario and start living towards that outcome, trusting that regardless of what happens, we'll have the tools and capability to solve the problems and find the solutions when the future becomes the present. Until then, it's free game for our imagination. All right, there you have it, a short and sweet podcast to end 2022 with. I hope as you look towards 2023, you see beautiful and wonderful things and are excited for what the future will hold for you. It's going to be good.